Welcome, deep divers. Today, we're plunging into a story that, well, it feels like a real contradiction. Imagine a country that's consistently praised, held up as this shining example of digital government, real leadership in cybersecurity, not just in Latin America, but, well, globally recognized. A place where technology and public services isn't just a goal, it's like a celebrated reality. We're talking about Uruguay. But here's where the story takes a really sharp, unsettling turn. What happens when that cutting-edge digital ambition, that big leap into an interconnected future, suddenly smashes head-on into a sophisticated, relentless cyber threat? Recent headlines have revealed a stark, almost unbelievable paradox. Millions upon millions of sensitive records from the very core of Uruguayan government entities. They're not just compromised, they're being openly peddled, sold on dark web forums. Right now. Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission today is to really dive deep into the specifics, the raw data, the breaches themselves, the who, the what, the where, and maybe most importantly, the profound implications. What does this mean for every citizen there?
For the future of the nation's entire digital backbone, we're going to explore how a country celebrated for its digital savvy finds itself, well, surprisingly vulnerable. Kind of at the mercy of threat actors who just seem to be consistently one step ahead.
Exactly. And, the story of Uruguay, it offers these crucial, I think, universal insights. We'll meticulously examine the actual types of information that have been exposed. We'll focus particularly on the most alarming incidents because some of them are truly shocking. And then, crucially, we'll connect those revelations directly to the broader relevance, the profound consequences for individual citizens, their privacy, their security, and the stability of governance itself. Because this isn't just about technical exploits, right? It's fundamentally about trust. We'll also need to scrutinize the Uruguayan government's response, or perhaps more accurately, its lack of response, maybe, or the effectiveness of its response in the face of this escalating cyber crisis. Because look, the patterns of vulnerability we see here, the sheer adaptability of cybercrime, the inherent challenges of securing our increasingly digital infrastructure, these are lessons that resonate far beyond Uruguay's borders. These events offer a critical lens, a way to view the risks to our own digital lives and the governments we rely on, no matter where you're listening from.
So let's start right there with this fascinating, almost bewildering dichotomy you mentioned. Uruguay, as you said, consistently gets top marks in international rankings. You look at e-government adoption, the widespread use of ICT's information and communication technologies, and the strength of its cybersecurity legal frameworks it often places, like top 5 in the Americas. It's genuinely been seen as a progressive trailblazer in this whole digital transformation game.
And this is where it gets truly unsettling, isn't it? This celebrated international status stands in such stark, almost painful contrast to the reality unfolding on the ground. We're witnessing not just, an isolated incident here or there, but a series of really large-scale data breaches, directly targeting Uruguay's core government entities. We're talking millions of highly sensitive records, actively being sold, traded on prominent dark web platforms as we speak. This isn't just bad luck. It's not an unfortunate setback. What we're observing points to what you can really only describe as a systemic failure, where the nation's commendable digital ambition has unfortunately just completely outstripped its foundational operational cybersecurity capabilities. The problem isn't the idea of digital government, which is truly transformative, no doubt. It's the execution of its security. In essence, the very strength, the speed of Uruguay's digital transformation. It's inadvertently created this vast, tempting, and it seems largely unprotected attack surface. It's a classic example, really. Security not merely lagging, but critically failing to keep pace with innovation. It's like building a high-speed digital highway without first making sure all the necessary guardrails and emergency services are properly in place, right? The faster you go, the more catastrophic the crash can potentially be.
Right. And given the sheer scale of what's been exposed, the critical question many listeners will have is, okay, where does all this stolen data actually go? And the answer, of course, is the dark web. Our sources indicate this Uruguayan government data is being ultimately distributed, sold on DarkForums. The name itself sounds pretty ominous, doesn't it?
It does.
But what really struck me, reviewing the material, was the incredible adaptability of these cybercriminal networks. This particular platform, DarkForums, it seems it popped up almost overnight as the successor to the infamous breach forums, which, was a major player until law enforcement recently disrupted it.
You've hit the nail on the head there. It's like a hydra-headed problem, isn't it? You cut off one head.
And another one appears.
Exactly. Often bigger, more entrenched. The disruption of breach forums, while definitely a tactical win for law enforcement, it led to this massive migration. Users, data, everything shifted. And DarkForums saw this astounding 600% increase in membership just between April and June 2025.
Wow, 600%.
Yeah. That kind of rapid growth isn't just interesting. It profoundly underscores the resilience, the dynamic nature of these underground ecosystems. And this resilience, it highlights a critical, often overlooked aspect of the whole cybercriminal supply chain. These dark web forums, like DarkForums, they aren't just simple anonymous marketplaces where you go buy stolen credit card numbers. That's maybe the old view. They are multifaceted, sophisticated hubs. They facilitate much more than just transactions. They're centers for intelligence sharing, threat actors, pool knowledge on vulnerabilities, effective attack methods. They're recruitment grounds for new talent, often providing tutorials, tools for aspiring cybercriminals.
So like a training ground, too.
In a way, yes. And they're strategic platforms for information release, sometimes used to maximize impact, pressure victims, maybe even serve political agendas, as we'll get into later. They provide this consolidated location. Malicious actors can get pretty much everything they need for any type of cybercrime. Basic identity theft, sure, but also highly complex financial fraud, even nation-state level social engineering attacks. This makes them a foundational component of the illicit economy. It shows that disrupting one part of the network often just leads to its rapid reformation, its evolution elsewhere. It's a constant game of whack-a-mole, like you said, but with significantly higher stakes.
So the detailed search results you mentioned finding on DarkForums, they paint a profoundly grim picture. Not just what was exposed, but the sheer scale of it. It sounds like a truly comprehensive catalog of compromised data hitting multiple Uruguayan government and public systems. This isn't just one or two small isolated leaks, is it?
Not at all. It's a clear indicator of widespread systemic vulnerability, not just a series of unrelated incidents. And it's unequivocally clear these are large-scale compromises of official public databases. The .gov.ay domain confirms it.
Okay, let's get into the specifics then, because this is where the gravity of this situation really hits home. It reveals the depth of the digital damage. First up, and this one is, well, perhaps the most alarming, the National ID and Civil Registry, that's dose.gov.ey. A staggering 3.2 million database records leaked.
3.2 million.
Yeah. Just think about the severity of that. This isn't just generic personal data. This is personally identifiable information, PII, at its most fundamental level. The absolute bedrock of identity. We're talking names, full dates of birth, possibly addresses, family lineage details, those crucial national identity numbers.
Everything you need.
Everything. This kind of data is the ultimate gold standard for identity thieves. It lets them construct entire false identities or just take over existing ones completely. Imagine a scenario. Someone has your full birth details, your national ID number. They could potentially open bank accounts, apply for loans, maybe even attempt to vote in your name. That's the level of risk we're discussing.
And it absolutely doesn't stop there. Next on the list, the E-Government and Information Society Agency, AGSIC, that's agisic.gov.ey. Here, 1.645 million database records were compromised.
Still over 1.5 million.
Exactly. And remember, AGSIC is the central agency for Uruguay's entire e-government push. This means sensitive interactions, all the digital processes citizens use for public services, a vast array of citizen data handled across the government. It's now exposed. Could be anything from tax records to details of digital applications. It exposes the very machinery of digital governance.
Then we get into potentially even more sensitive territory, the mystery of social development, badenmobiles.gov.ui. They also saw 560,000 database records leaked.
500,000.
Yeah. And this is especially concerning because this ministry deals with individuals who often rely on social services, vulnerable populations. So the data likely contains highly sensitive personal information. Things related to social assistance, financial aid qualifications, housing status, maybe even health conditions.
Which makes them prime targets.
Exactly. The exposure of this type of data makes these citizens prime targets for highly personalized scams, fraud, or even blackmail, exploiting their specific circumstances.
Yeah.
And the list just keeps going. The Ministry of Public Health, msp.gov.piy. They had names, email addresses, and employment details leaked. The volume wasn't specified in our sources, but any health-related PII is profoundly critical.
Absolutely. It's ripe for targeted attacks, could lead to medical identity theft, insurance fraud, or even exploiting sensitive health info for blackmail.
We also saw compromises from entities like the government of Canelones, an undisclosed amount, but described as significant, of database information. And then various other Uruguayan sources contributing to this cache of over 12,000 documents, just miscellaneous documents floating around.
Mm-hmm. And the consistent presence, as you noted, of multiple domains ending in .gov.y, the official top-level domain for the Uruguayan government, it confirms beyond any doubt. These are official state entities. This isn't about targeting a few isolated organizations. It's a broad attack surface that's been breached. So if we connect all this, if we try to see the bigger picture, the sheer volume, the alarming diversity of these compromises, it really screams one thing. This is not just bad luck. This isn't random. It strongly suggests a single systemic weakness that has been exploited across a significant portion of the government's digital infrastructure.
Like a common vulnerability.
Exactly. It points to potential issues like maybe a shared vendor that was vulnerable, or a common misconfiguration that was present across multiple systems, or even a sophisticated supply chain attack that let attackers infiltrate many agencies simultaneously through just one entry point. The implications are profound because this isn't about one department having a bad day. It's about the fundamental digital architecture of the state being compromised across multiple critical functions. This widespread exposure means the risk isn't just to individual data points, but to the entire digital trust fabric of the nation. It could potentially undermine years of progress, undermine citizen reliance on e-government. It's a crisis of trust right at its very core.
Okay, now, out of all these leaks we've discussed, and they're all significant, right? There's one finding that just stands out as maybe the most alarming, the most critical, the compromise of 30,000 national ID public key infrastructure PKI certificates. And here's the kicker, with their passwords already cracked.
That's the phrase that sends shivers down your spine. Passwords already cracked.
It's not just critical, it's genuinely catastrophic.
Off.
For those listeners who might not be deeply familiar with PKI, think of it as the ultimate digital ID card and signature mechanism. It's the backbone for strong authentication, secure encryption, and legally binding digital signatures. It's what allows for truly secure online interactions and verifies with the highest degree of certainty who you say you are in the digital world. And in Uruguay, this system is absolutely foundational. Their ID Uruguay system specifically uses these PKI certificates to provide what they call an advanced level of digital identification. This isn't just for logging into basic websites, no. It's legally equivalent to a handwritten signature.
Legally equivalent.
For over 190 different government services. Think about that range. Securely accessing personal health records, filing taxes, conducting financial transactions, registering businesses, signing official legal documents.
It works.
Pretty much everything critical. It is the very essence of digital trust and legal validity within the nation's digital framework.
And this is, without any exaggeration, a catastrophic failure. And that phrase, passwords already cracked, is precisely why. See, a PKI certificate itself is essentially the public key component of a cryptographic key pair. Its value for fraud only truly unlocks when an attacker gets the corresponding private key, which is supposed to be protected by a password or passphrase.
Right, that's the security layer.
That's the layer. The critical, deeply worrying aspect here is that attackers not only managed to steal these 30,000 certificates, but they also successfully cracked their associated passwords. This signals a severe operational security failure. It goes beyond just compromising data. It's not necessarily a flaw in the sophisticated crypto algorithms themselves, which are usually quite strong. It's more likely a profound breakdown in the human and procedural elements meant to protect these vital digital assets. What does that suggest? Well, it strongly points towards extremely weak, easily guessable, or maybe reused passwords.
Like password 123.
Could be something that simple, unfortunately. Or, perhaps even worse, improper storage of those passwords within the government systems. Like maybe a lack of proper salting and hashing.
Okay, can you quickly break down salting and hashing for us?
Sure. So hashing basically transforms a password into a fixed-length string of characters, making it unreadable. You can't easily reverse it. Salting adds a unique, random string of characters to each password before it's hashed. Why is that important? It makes it incredibly difficult for attackers to use pre-computed tables of common passwords, things called rainbow tables, to crack them, even if they get hold of the database of hashed passwords.
Got it. So unique salt for each password makes those tables useless.
Exactly. The absence or inadequacy of these standard protections would enable offline attacks like brute force, just trying millions of combinations, or credential stuffing, trying known breached passwords to succeed relatively easily. So the ability of these attackers to not only get the certificates but also crack the passphrases, it fundamentally elevates the threat. It moves from just a potential risk to an imminent and widespread danger of mass impersonation and fraud. And this is on a national security level. If we connect this to the bigger picture, a compromised PKI certificate with a cracked password is quite literally a digital master key.
The master key.
Yes, it's the highest level of digital trust and authentication a citizen can possess within the Uruguayan e-government system. Losing it with the passwords already cracked means attackers can literally sign documents, conduct legally binding transactions, access sensitive systems, all on behalf of thousands of citizens. Legally, this is a profound, deeply concerning vulnerability for any society relying on digital identity. It's a fundamental blow to the very foundation of digital trust.
So just to really hammer this home, to grasp the full gravity, it's not just about a website being down for a bit or some data getting viewed by the wrong people. It's about the very fabric of how the country operates digitally, potentially being torn apart. Uruguay's entire digital transformation, this forward-thinking vision, it hinges entirely on the absolute reliability, the integrity of its PKI system.
That's the linchpin.
Totally. As we've said, this system isn't just a tool for securing web pages. It is the absolute cornerstone of the nation's e-government architecture. It provides secure, verified digital identities for citizens. It enables trusted, legally recognized interactions across, over 190 public services?
Over 190, yeah, it's vast.
Just think about that range in your own life. Every critical interaction with the government. Accessing health records, financial transactions, registering a business, making official declarations, even signing legally binding contracts. All of these crucial services are designed to be done digitally in Uruguay, relying on the integrity of this PKI system. And their electronic signature law N degrees 18,600, goes even further. It explicitly gives these advanced electronic signatures, the ones enabled by PKI, the same legal validity as your handwritten signature.
Which is huge.
It's huge. This isn't just about convenience. It's the very basis of legal and administrative trust. It enables millions of transactions every year. When that cornerstone crumbles, the entire building is at risk.
Yeah, the leak of 30,000 national ID PKI certificates with passwords cracked carries truly devastating, far-reaching consequences. It goes well beyond what a typical data breach might entail. A compromised certificate like this, it effectively acts as both a digital passport and a signature authority all rolled into one. It allows an attacker to impersonate a legitimate user with full legal equivalence, completely bypassing security measures that rely on that PKI-based trust. This opens the door to a wide, deeply damaging range of fraudulent and malicious activities. First, as you touched on, we're looking at the potential for mass identity theft and forgery on a scale that's just unprecedented. Attackers can use these stolen certificates to digitally sign fraudulent documents, contracts, financial transactions.
And it's legally binding.
That's the terrifying part. Given the legal equivalence, it becomes exceptionally difficult for victims to contest these fraudulent actions. Imagine trying to prove you didn't sign that loan agreement or that property transfer, maybe even a marriage certificate, when there's a legally valid digital signature tied directly to your national ID saying you did.
The burden of proof just flips entirely onto the victim.
Completely, creating immense legal and financial distress. Nightmare scenarios. This also leads directly to widespread unauthorized access. With a valid stolen certificate, cybercriminals can gain unfettered access to various government and private systems that rely on these credentials. They can access highly confidential information, personal medical histories, financial statements, and critically, they can initiate actions on behalf of the impersonated citizen.
So it's not just reading data, it's doing things.
Exactly. It's actively acting as that person in the digital realm, making decisions, initiating processes, all with legal weight, and perhaps the most insidious, the most long-lasting impact. This fundamentally erodes public trust. This is a core, almost existential threat to Uruguay's ambitious digital transformation efforts. If citizens lose faith in the security, the integrity of e-government services, if they believe their digital identity can be so easily hijacked,
They'll just stop using it.
they may very well revert en masse to physical, paper-based processes, which would not only reverse years of progress and significant investment, but it could also effectively render the nation's entire digital agenda ineffective, or, at best, severely crippled. This raises a massive question, doesn't it? If the foundational trust mechanism of your digital identity is fundamentally broken, how do you even begin to rebuild it? And what are the long-term societal costs, the economic costs, even the political costs? Beyond just the immediate financial impact, the implications ripple through every aspect of digital life. It creates this chilling effect on innovation, on public engagement. It's really profound.
Let's circle back to that really unsettling phrase again, passwords already cracked. You mentioned the detail isn't suggesting some inherent weakness in the PKI crypto itself, right?
Yeah.
Which is usually super robust.
Generally, yes. The underlying cryptographic algorithms are typically very strong.
So instead, it points to what? A profound operational security failure.
Precisely. It's not about breaking a complex, mathematically secure code. It's about exploiting human and procedural weaknesses in how those codes and the keys they protect were managed. The attackers likely weren't forced into these massive, computationally intensive efforts to break the actual encryption of the certificates. Instead, they almost certainly exploited vulnerabilities in the human-centric, the procedural aspects of the system, which means, most likely, brute force or dictionary attacks on the passwords protecting those private keys.
So guessing passwords, basically.
Or using lists of common passwords, or previously breached passwords. This implies those passwords were weak, maybe reused across different systems, or, critically, not properly protected with standard security practices. That lack of robust salting and hashing we talked about earlier. If the password database itself was compromised, it would have made cracking these passwords offline much, much easier. It's like finding a locked safe, but the combination is taped to the back. A truly security-conscious system, especially one managing such high-trust digital identities like these, it would have enforced mandatory multi-factor authentication, MFA, for access, and would have required robust, non-guessable passphrases that are highly resistant to offline cracking attempts.
Basic security hygiene, almost.
You could call it that, yes. Fundamental security controls. The failure to implement these standard controls essentially handed attackers a literal master key to a significant chunk of the nation's digital identities. This wasn't a sophisticated cryptographic attack targeting the core tech. It was likely a fundamental breakdown in basic security practices, which allowed attackers to impersonate citizens with legally equivalent digital signatures, not by breaking advanced tech, but by exploiting what are essentially elementary security oversights. It's a stark lesson, isn't it, in how operational security, or the lack thereof, can completely undermine even the most advanced technological systems.
So, okay, despite all of Uruguay's high international rankings, its reputation as a digital leader. This Inter-American Development Bank report, the IDB report, really seems to nail the core issue. It noted that while Uruguay has rolled out all these impressive digital initiatives, its cyberspace protection efforts have not kept pace with digitization.
That's the key phrase right there, not kept pace.
Yeah. And this is critical because the nation's rapid, ambitious push to digitize all government services laid out in their Uruguay Digital Agenda 2025 has, kind of ironically, created this vast, unprotected attack surface, which cybercriminals are now just having a field day with, apparently.
And look, this isn't a random surge in attacks we're seeing. It's a direct, almost predictable consequence of this widening security gap. We've seen a dramatic increase in cyber incidents reported, attacks rising from, just under 5,000 in 2023?
Yeah, 4,968.
To an astonishing 14,264 in 2024.
Wow, nearly triple.
It translates to an average of one cyber attack every 30 minutes across government systems.
Every half hour.
It's relentless, and the IDB report clearly identifies the key deficiencies allowing this. Significant operational shortcomings, particularly a lack of internal capacity to effectively monitor incidents and, critically, to respond to them. And on top of that, a critical shortage of trained cybersecurity professionals. We're talking a deficit of at least 600 experts needed just to properly secure their existing systems.
600 people short.
Yeah. So the government's focus on rapid digital expansion, which, look, is laudable for efficiency gains, it inadvertently created this massive cyber debt. They didn't adequately invest in the security foundations at the same time. They prioritized getting services online quickly, but skimped on protecting them. And now they're paying the price, leaving them wide open.
Okay, so let's look more specifically at how these breaches actually happened. What were the methods? Our sources point to several common attack vectors, things that, frankly, many governments and organizations globally struggle with. Compromised credentials seem to be a huge one. Accounts for about 10% of global data breaches, apparently. And it's clearly a critical factor here, especially with the cracking of those national ID PKI certificate passwords we keep coming back to.
It demonstrates a fundamental failure in managing and protecting critical user credentials across government systems. Attackers aren't necessarily breaking through complex firewalls, they're just logging in, using stolen or guessed passwords, walking in the front door.
Then we have misconfiguration and human error. These aren't, malicious attacks in themselves, but they are incredibly costly, accounting for 26% and 23% of incidents, respectively. Huge percentages.
Massive and often avoidable.
Right. These are mistakes. Settings left insecure, default passwords never changed, systems improperly installed or configured. A prime example mentioned is the attack on Dynacia, the National Directorate of Civil Aviation. That involved DNS poisoning.
Right.
Can you simplify DNS poisoning for us?
Sure. Think of the internet having a phone book, the domain name system, or DNS. DNS poisoning is like someone secretly changing the phone number for a legitimate website or service in that phone book. So when you try to call or connect to, say, the Aviation Authority's website, we're actually redirected to a malicious actor's fake site or server instead, without necessarily realizing it.
Okay, so you think you're talking to the government, but you're not.
Exactly. And that kind of attack is often indicative of a misconfiguration or a human error that left the system vulnerable to being manipulated like that.
And finally, a classic. Outdated systems. Experts confirm that running old software, old servers, it's like putting out a welcome mat for hackers.
It really is low-hanging fruit.
Yeah. These systems often have known vulnerabilities, flaws that have been discovered and publicized, but they just haven't been patched or updated.
The persistence of these vulnerabilities, even with government investment in digital infrastructure, points to a lack of systematic maintenance, a lack of regular patching, maybe a slow modernization cycle overall.
It's like building that beautiful new digital house we talked about, but forgetting to install modern locks on the doors and windows. Or worse, leaving the old rusty ones that everyone knows how to pick.
And to really underscore the tangible, crippling impact of these systemic vulnerabilities and the government's operational challenges, we need to look at a very stark case study, the Pace-induced City Hall ransomware attack in 2024. This incident serves as this powerful microcosm of the larger national problem. Cybercriminals successfully blocked access to a large chunk of the city's institutional information.
This wasn't just a minor inconvenience, right?
Not at all. It included critical services, payroll couldn't be processed, their official website was down, even their connection to the National Vehicle Revenue System was severed. It effectively brought municipal operations grinding to a halt. And the hackers, showing their financial motivation, demanded a hefty ransom, US $650,000.
Wow. Did they pay?
No, commendably, the authorities refused to pay the ransom, which is generally the recommended course of action. You don't want to fund cybercrime. But the aftermath revealed the severe limitations in Uruguay's response capacity. AGSIC, that central e-government agency we keep mentioning, they did provide assistance. But the critical detail here is that its efforts were explicitly described in the sources as limited.
Limited help.
Yeah. And the city was reportedly still struggling to restore information months later. Months. This just powerfully demonstrates the severe operational, financial, and, yes, reputational consequences when effective response capacity is lacking. It really underscores the reality. Even with a legal framework in place, even with an agency designated to help, the technical expertise, the human capital, the sheer operational capacity to actually respond effectively to a significant cyber incident are often sorely lacking in practice. This incident highlights that a lack of proactive investment in preparedness leads directly to severe long-term operational disruption, affecting real people, essential services.
So we've talked about the what and the how, but who is actually doing this? Is there a face, or rather an alias, behind these widespread breaches?
Well, our sources consistently point towards a particularly sophisticated and persistent threat actor, operating under the pseudonym Uruguayo 337.
Uruguayo 337. How?
Yeah. And this doesn't seem to be just a random or opportunistic attacker. This individual, or maybe it's a group, has actively claimed responsibility for multiple high-profile attacks, including that database leak from the Ministry of Public Health we mentioned earlier, and the DNS poisoning of the Dynacia, the National Directorate of Civil Aviation website, the one with the political message.
Okay, so they're taking credit.
They are. And their modus operandi, their method, appears to be this unique and potent blend. On one hand, politically motivated hacktivism. On the other, the financially driven sale of stolen data. This combination makes them particularly dangerous because they can pursue both ideological goals and monetary gains at the same time, effectively leveraging one to fuel the other.
That dual motivation.
Yeah.
You said it's a hallmark of modern cybercriminal groups.
It is, increasingly so. It makes them incredibly adaptable, very difficult to counter. For instance, that Dynacia hack, the Aviation Authority one. Uruguayo 1337 claimed responsibility, and it came with this clear political manifesto. The manifesto openly criticized Uruguay's progressive political agendas. It took aim at organizations like the World Economic Forum. It decried perceived government corruption.
So real political statements.
Absolutely. The message, which was apparently displayed prominently on the defaced website, explicitly stated that the country needs rulers, not puppets. And it brazenly threatened to leak even more sensitive information, specifically targeting politicians. This kind of political rhetoric is common in hacktivism, right, where attacks are framed as a form of social justice or protest, designed to grab attention, exert pressure. However, this potent political messaging runs in parallel, stands in stark contrast sometimes to the simultaneous financial activity of the actor, which clearly includes the active sale of all that compromised government data we discussed on dark web forums like DarkForums.
So they protest and they profit.
Exactly. This ability to combine ideological messaging with direct for-profit criminal activity, it allows them to exert pressure on their targets while simultaneously monetizing the stolen data, which then presumably funds future operations, enhances their overall capabilities. It's a very pragmatic, very effective, and deeply troubling approach for a sophisticated threat actor. It gives them multiple levers of influence and sustainability that can cause chaos and get paid for it, a truly destructive combination.
What's also incredibly important here, and frankly quite concerning, Uruguay 13337 doesn't seem to be working entirely alone, right? They're not isolated.
That's what the evidence suggests. Our sources indicate clear links to other actors, specifically mentioning names like La Pampa Leaks and Bogota Leaks. This suggests a broader, possibly interconnected network of Spanish-speaking threat actors operating across the region.
Okay, so a regional network potentially.
Potentially. And here's the truly alarming part. There's evidence suggesting a direct connection, or at least an association, with the highly regarded, or perhaps feared is a better word, threat actor known as Machine Lore 3 Layer 7.
Machine 337, who are they?
Machine 337 is well known in cybersecurity circles for conducting large-scale, high-profile breaches against major international corporations. Big names. Cisco, Huawei, even Snapchat have reportedly been victims.
Wow, okay, so this Uruguay 0337 might be linked to some seriously big players on the global stage.
That's the implication. This international affiliation and the demonstrated high level of technical capability, it's absolutely crucial for understanding the nature of the threat Uruguay is facing. This is not a simple script kiddie, some amateur dabbling in cybercrime. Uruguay 1337 appears to be a competent, well-resourced, and globally connected cyber criminal entity. The repeated targeting of Uruguay's government, therefore, it doesn't look like an opportunistic hit born of chance. It looks like a calculated, persistent operation, likely leveraging sophisticated tools and techniques. This consistent, focused attention poses a significant, ongoing national security concern for Uruguay. It underscores that the nation is up against a well-organized, skilled adversary, which further highlights the urgent need for robust, proactive, sophisticated defense mechanisms, far beyond what currently appears to be in place. It's a global-caliber threat targeting local vulnerabilities.
Okay, so let's pivot now. Let's turn our attention to how Uruguay has officially responded to all this, starting with its legal framework. And here, actually, the picture appears quite positive, at least on paper, right?
On paper, yes. Uruguay has actually made significant strides in this area. They enacted a new cybercrime law, Law Number 20,327, in late 2024. This is a comprehensive piece of legislation. It's specifically designed to modernize their penal code to address digital crimes, things like unauthorized data access, identity theft, online fraud, the things we're seeing happen.
And it even mandates cybersecurity education. That seems pretty forward-thinking.
It is, yeah. A commendable step towards building a more resilient digital society from the ground up. And this new law, importantly, also explicitly aims to align Uruguay with international standards, bringing it closer to joining the Budapest Convention on Cybercrime.
Which is the big international treaty.
Exactly. It's key for harmonizing cybercrime laws globally and fostering international cooperation in investigations. Complementing this, they already had a robust personal data protection law, Law Number 18,331. This one is GDPR aligned.
Like the European standard.
Precisely. Which means it's quite strict. It mandates, for example, breach notification within 72 hours. So these legislative actions, taken together, they clearly demonstrate a strong strategic intent by the Uruguayan government. They want to take digital crime seriously. They want to align with global best practices. These are strong policy actions. They indicate a clear strategic vision for cybersecurity, at least. Oh, well, at least in the halls of government. Hashtag 6.2. Institutional capacity versus operational reality, lack of action.
Okay, so they have the laws, they have the strategic vision on paper, but what about the institutions? The bodies designed to actually enforce those laws and protect against these very attacks.
Right, the operational side. The country's institutional response is primarily led by that agency we keep mentioning, AGISEC, the Electronic Government and Information Society Agency. And under a G6 umbrella are two absolutely key operational bodies. There's CERTU, Uruguay's National Computer Security Incident Response Center. Yep. And GSOC, the Government Security Operations Center. CERTUI is supposed to coordinate the response to cyberspace incidents nationally. GSOC's role is to monitor and analyze incidents specifically within the government's own critical ICT infrastructure.
Okay, sounds like the right structure.
But this is precisely where we see that critical and, frankly, alarming gap. The gap between that strong strategic intent and the harsh operational reality. Documented reports, including those from the IDB we discussed, highlight a significant disparity here. CERTUI's technical capacity is explicitly noted as having not kept pace with the rapidly evolving demands of a sophisticated digital world. And crucially, the GSOC lacks the necessary resources to fulfill its purpose effectively.
Lacks resources, so underfunded, understaffed, both.
Likely both. The reports point to a documented shortfall in trained personnel, that 600-plus expert gap again, but also potentially outdated technology and inadequate financial resources overall. So while the government has indeed established a legal authority, the institutional structures on paper, its actual on-the-ground operational ability to prevent, detect, and respond to breaches is significantly constrained. This means their otherwise well-intentioned law-based strategy is severely hampered. Hampered by a critical lack of operational capacity, it effectively turns good policy into limited, often reactive action. It's like having a detailed emergency plan but no firefighters or equipment ready to go when the fire breaks out.
Which brings us squarely back to that central paradox we started with, doesn't it? Uruguay has high international rankings.
Yep.
They seem to reflect its strategic vision, its legal framework, the ambition to be a digital leader, but they clearly do not reflect its actual on-the-ground operational readiness to defend against these sophisticated threats.
Absolutely. The repeated large-scale breaches we've detailed, combined with these acknowledged capacity gaps, they aren't just isolated problems. They expose a critical fundamental imbalance. The rapid and, yes, undeniably successful digitalization of public services has, in essence, created this national cyber debt.
Cyber debt. Explain that.
Well, the government quite commendably prioritized accessibility and efficiency, valuable goals for any modern society. Get services online, make them easy to use. But it did so without adequately resourcing the foundational security needed to protect its vast new digital assets at the same time. This created a profound vulnerability, a ticking clock of exposed systems. They borrowed against future security, so to speak.
And now the bill is due.
Yeah, exactly. The new cybercrime law is certainly a valuable, timely, reactive measure to the surge in incidents. It shows they understand the legal landscape needs updating. But to truly secure its digital future, Uruguay needs a fundamental strategic shift. It must move definitively from a primarily policy-driven approach to one that prioritizes proactive operational defense. And that requires significant sustained investment in both cutting-edge technology and, crucially, in human capital, closing that alarming gap between its strategic ambitions and its critical operational reality. The current crisis isn't an anomaly. It feels like a direct, almost inevitable consequence of this unaddressed cyber debt.
So, okay, given everything we've laid out, the sheer scale of the compromise, the depth of the vulnerabilities, this concept of cyber debt, what immediate actions are needed right now, like today, to contain this crisis and prevent further potentially catastrophic damage?
An immediate, decisive, and highly visible response is absolutely critical, both to regain control and, just as importantly, to begin the long process of rebuilding trust. First and foremost, containment and remediation. The government must immediately revoke all 30,000 of those compromised national ID PKI certificates.
All of them, no question.
No question. They represent live digital master keys out in the wild. This revocation needs to be followed by a clear, swift, and widely communicated plan for their reissuance, making it as painless as possible for affected citizens. Concurrently, a comprehensive top-to-bottom security audit and vulnerability scan of all government domains, especially those .gov.ei systems, must be initiated immediately to identify and patch all known vulnerabilities and misconfigurations. This is just urgent operational necessity. Second, public notification and citizen support. As required by their own data protection laws, the government must clearly, transparently, and simply notify all affected citizens about these breaches. No jargon, just clarity.
And tell them what to do.
Exactly. This notification needs concrete, actionable guidance, readily accessible resources for identity theft monitoring, for fraud prevention. What steps should they take? Transparency here isn't just a legal obligation. It is the absolute key to beginning the arduous process of rebuilding public trust, which has clearly been severely shaken. And third, a thorough forensic investigation is paramount. This isn't just about finding out what happened after the fact. It's about systematically identifying the specific attack vectors used, the exact points of entry, determining the full scope and impact of the breach. Are there other things we don't know about yet? This information is essential for implementing targeted remediation, for understanding the adversary, Uruguay 337 and potentially others, and critically for preventing future incidents. These are not options. They are imperatives for any responsible government facing a crisis of this magnitude.
Okay, those are the immediate firefighting steps. But beyond that, what about the long game? What strategic enhancements are needed to build lasting resilience, to stop this kind of systemic failure from happening all over again in a few years?
Right. To truly secure Uruguay's digital future, and maybe even more critically, to restore lasting public trust, a fundamental long-term shift in strategy and investment is required. This goes beyond patching holes. First, strengthening PKI management significantly. The national PKI system needs modernization, not just patching. This means implementing truly robust password policies beyond just simple complexity rules, making multi-factor authentication, MFA, mandatory for all users, not optional, and rigorously enforcing its use. Additionally, the government should seriously move towards using hardware security modules, HSMs, for the secure storage of those critical private keys.
HSN, remind us what those are.
Sure. HSMs are dedicated physical devices, purpose-built, tamper-resistant hardware specifically designed to securely store cryptographic keys. They make it far, far harder to steal or compromise keys compared to just storing them in software on a server.
Okay, like a physical vault for digital keys.
That's a good analogy. And enforcing regular key rotation policies is also essential, limiting the lifespan of any potentially compromised certificates. Secondly, there absolutely must be significant and immediate investment in institutional capacity. Real money, real resources. This means funding to acquire modern detection and response tools for CHOE and GSOC, tools that can actually cope with today's threats. And it means a concerted national effort to train, recruit, and retain cybersecurity professionals. To address that critical national deficit of at least 600 experts we keep highlighting, you simply cannot fight modern, sophisticated cyber threats with outdated tools and severely understaffed teams. It's an unfair fight. Thirdly, fostering public-private partnerships is absolutely essential. More collaboration between government agencies like AGISIC and leading private sector cybersecurity firms. Why? For vital threat intelligence sharing. The government needs to tap into real-time threat landscapes and to accelerate the adoption of advanced security technologies and best practices. Let's face it, the private sector often moves much faster in cybersecurity innovation. The government needs to leverage that agility.
Get help from those already fighting these battles daily.
Precisely. And finally, a comprehensive cybersecurity education program, as touched upon in the new cybercrime law, but it needs real implementation. A national awareness campaign, not just targeting government employees, but all citizens. This is about fostering a stronger cybernetic culture, making the entire population, from civil servants to everyday users, more resilient, more aware of common attack vectors like phishing, social engineering, better able to identify suspicious digital interactions. It's about empowering everyone to be an active part of the nation's digital defense. Security is everyone's responsibility to some extent.
So, after discussing all these breaches, the vulnerabilities, the needed fixes, what does this truly mean for the future of Uruguay's digital dreams? Specifically, their ambitious Digital Agenda 2025 and that vision for a fully digitized nation. It sounds like it means hitting pause, maybe, going back to basics, but with a much clearer, harsher understanding that the foundation wasn't nearly as strong as they thought.
That's precisely it. These breaches aren't just minor setbacks. They directly challenge the core ambitions, the very feasibility of the Uruguay Digital Agenda 2025. The relevance here is profound. Without a robust, deeply resilient cybersecurity foundation, all the promised benefits of digitization, the efficiency, the accessibility, the convenience are fundamentally undermined.
The whole promise evaporates if it's not secure.
Exactly. All that investment, all that progress is constantly at risk if the underlying security isn't there, if the trust isn't there. Therefore, the agenda itself needs a critical reevaluation. It's not about abandoning it, perhaps, but about reprioritizing. It must now prioritize security and resilience before rushing to develop new services or expand existing ones. The lessons from this crisis are abundantly clear, painful though they may be. Security must be baked into the design from the very start, integrated deeply into every process, every system, not merely bolted on as an afterthought when something goes wrong. Only then can Uruguay truly hope to achieve its vision of a secure, trusted, and thriving digital nation. Anything less is just building on quicksand. Hashtag, tag, outro.
And that brings us towards the close of this deep dive. Wow. We've navigated the complex, often quite alarming landscape of Uruguay's recent cyber breaches, from the truly shocking specifics of the data exposed to millions of records, and maybe most critically, those 30,000 national digital ID certificates with passwords already cracked, all the way to the systemic vulnerabilities, the operational shortcomings that allowed these attacks to proliferate.
Yeah, and the core takeaway for you, our listener, I think, is this. Uruguay's journey, its struggle, highlights a powerful and frankly universal truth in our digital age. Rapid digital transformation, no matter how ambitious or well-intentioned, if it's done without proportionate concurrent investment in robust cybersecurity, it inevitably creates a dangerous cyber debt. The Uruguayan government's actions, while perhaps strong in policy and legal frameworks on paper, have evidently fallen severely short in operational capacity in proactive defense, turning good intentions into gaping vulnerabilities. The challenge facing them now is immense. It demands not just reactive fixes, but a fundamental strategic shift in how they approach, prioritize, and fund their digital security infrastructure.
And this story, as we said at the start, it isn't just about Uruguay. It really is a powerful mirror, reflecting the potential vulnerabilities of every nation, every organization, and indeed every single one of us embracing digital services more and more each day. This critical situation offers a stark lesson in digital governance, in national security, and maybe even in personal security in our increasingly interconnected world.
Which really raises an important question for you to consider long after you stop listening to us. What responsibility do we as citizens, as users of these digital services, have in holding our governments accountable? Accountable for securing the digital foundations they built, supposedly for our benefit, and perhaps more personally. What critical lessons can we draw from Uruguay's precarious situation right now to better protect our own digital lives, our own identities in this increasingly interconnected and, yes, increasingly vulnerable world? Something to mull over. Until our next deep dive.